This happened to me in my first year of college. Everyone was using Tinder, a new dating app at the time. Curious, I decided to give it a try. Scrolling through profiles, I came across several interesting guys, but one, let's call him Alex, really stood out. I liked his profile, and to my excitement, we matched. I felt a rush of happiness because he looked very handsome. He messaged me first, and the butterflies in my stomach went wild. We chatted on the app for about an hour, talking about simple things. He asked about my studies and shared a bit about himself. After a bit, Alex wanted my phone number to text directly. He seemed kind, so I gave it to him. Our texts were full of light-hearted flirting, and soon we made plans to meet. On the fourth day of chatting, he started calling me babe, which felt sweet but also a bit strange since we hadn't met in person yet. I decided not to make a big deal out of it. Then, Alex began to push for us to be a couple and insisted on meeting at his place to hang out with him and his dog. This made me uncomfortable. I suggested meeting somewhere public first, as I wasn't about to visit the home of someone I hadn't met. He accused me of overreacting but eventually apologized, agreeing to meet in public. As the weekend approached, I started feeling uneasy about our planned meeting. On the day we were supposed to meet, my intuition told me to cancel. I texted him, making up an excuse about my mom needing help at home. Alex became upset, downplaying my excuse and pressuring me to come over, promising I could leave any time to help my mom. Alex's insistence grew stronger. He said he wanted to see me and even mentioned wanting to kiss me. I firmly told him I was staying with my mom for the weekend. I did go home to see her, which was only a half-hour drive. After the way Alex spoke about my mom, I started ignoring his messages, but he wouldn't stop texting me, filling my phone with messages begging for my attention and apologizing. I planned to tell him the next day that I was busy, but then the calls started coming in. In just 2 hours, I missed 45 calls from him. His voicemails were full of apologies, saying he just missed me and wanted me to call him back. The voicemails didn't stop the whole time I was with my mom. Later, my roommate suggested we go out. As I prepared to return to my dorm, Alex's attempts to reach me intensified. He bombarded me with texts and voicemails, even reaching out on Tinder and Instagram, questioning why I wasn't responding. One message on Instagram particularly alarmed me. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming back to town tonight?" This creeped me out. I asked him how he knew I was back, and he mentioned checking my Tinder location, which only shows distance within a mile. This level of monitoring shocked me, and I called him out for being creepy. Despite telling him off, Alex kept messaging me, now trying to apologize for making me uncomfortable about him tracking my location. He claimed he was just worried about me. This had all happened in less than a week of us texting. After sharing everything with my roommate, we decided to stay in that night, not wanting to risk encountering him. The situation escalated when I received a message from Alex claiming he was outside my dorm with flowers and chocolates, asking for forgiveness. That crossed a line for me. I immediately contacted campus security, but they found no one outside. I assumed he was waiting in his car, hoping I'd respond. I blocked him on all platforms, deleted Tinder, and vowed never to return. I've seen him once in town since then, but he didn't recognize me. To Alex, if you're listening, I'm relieved we never met. You've made me wary of every attractive guy I see. Last month, I moved to a new country, a place where I knew almost nobody. Because of this, I found myself alone most of the time, feeling bored and isolated. Despite my usual disinterest in dating apps like Tinder, the loneliness pushed me to give it a try. I spent many hours swiping left and right, engaging in short chats with the people I matched with. However, I noticed that most of my matches, particularly men, were eager to meet up the very same day we matched, which I found quite alarming. Our tale begins when I matched with a woman in her 30s named Jane. She didn't waste time in sending me a message or asking for my phone number. Since I was new to Tinder, I thought this was normal and gave her my number without any prior conversation. This turned out to be my first mistake. Initially, everything seemed fine. Jane would send me voice messages and we talked a bit about ourselves, though only on a surface level. She appeared really keen on chatting, often sending me multiple messages if I didn't reply quickly. I found this behavior odd, but didn't think much of it at the time. After talking for a day, Jane suggested we meet up. Despite our shallow conversations, I agreed, and we planned to meet in an hour. However, as the time approached, I began to feel uneasy about the idea. I decided against meeting her, deleted my Tinder account, and sent her a message apologizing for the change of plans. That's when things took a strange turn. She responded saying it was okay, but then, moments later, she bombarded me with messages only to delete them so quickly that I couldn't read a single word. A few hours passed, and she attempted to video call me. I didn't pick up and explained I was busy. Despite my response, Jane didn't stop there. She continued to call me over and over again. Each time I repeated that I was busy, hoping she would get the message. But Jane's calls didn't stop until about 2 in the morning. By that time, I was out, feeling a bit tipsy, and decided to block her number. I felt guilty for a moment, considering I was a young woman, barely in my 20s, living alone in a strange land. Yet there was a sense of relief, believing the ordeal was finally behind me. But as it turned out, it was far from over. The next morning, I was greeted by a message from an unknown number. The profile picture on WhatsApp showed an elderly man. Confused, I inquired who it was, and within a minute I got a response. It was Jane, using her father's phone, questioning why I had blocked her and if she had upset me. The situation felt increasingly odd, but I attempted to understand her perspective and responded honestly. Yet after our brief exchange, I ended up blocking her father's number as well. No more than 2 hours had passed before another message popped up from yet another unknown number. It was Jane again, asking why I kept blocking her and insisting that she needed to talk to me. At this point, the situation had lost any hint of humor. I told her firmly that I was not interested in continuing our conversation, but she persisted, claiming she had something important to tell me, that there was another girl harassing her, involved in black magic. Despite my clear disinterest, she continued, trying to convince me of her story, leading me to block her for the 3rd time. I couldn't tell if this was some twisted joke, or if she genuinely believed in what she was saying, but one thing was certain. My first foray into the world of Tinder was a complete disaster. It left me wondering if this was a common experience, though I had no intention of finding out by downloading the app again. One lesson was clear. Never share my phone number with someone I haven't had a real conversation with. I can only hope to never cross paths with Jane again. I'm a 24-year-old girl, and I tried Tinder just to see how it was. I didn't think it was a big deal. For me, life is mostly about having fun. I guess I sometimes forget that the internet is real, and the people on it are too. One day, after I was out taking care of some stuff, I got on the bus to head home. I sat down and noticed a big guy looking at me. People look at me a lot, so I didn't pay much attention. Oh, and I had stopped using Tinder a while ago. I sneezed, and he said, "Bless you." And I thanked him. He was big, had lots of hair, green eyes, and dark skin. He offered me a tissue, which was clean, and then gave me a piece of gum. I thanked him and put it in my bag. "1 mile," he said. His voice was slow and deep, which made me think he was not like everyone else. "What?" I asked. 1 mile, that's what it said on your Tinder. You were 1 mile away from me. "I remember you. We talked. Then you stopped answering." He then handed me a fancy wrapped chocolate ball. I laughed nervously and told him I had deleted my account. Truthfully, I didn't remember talking to him. I used to swipe right on anyone. He kept asking for my phone number, and I ended up giving it to him because I'm terrible at saying no to people face to face. He called me right then to make sure it was really my number. After that, I got off the bus at a different stop, not too far from my house, and walked fast to get home. I threw away his chocolate, blocked his number, and hoped that meeting him was just by chance and not because he was trying to follow me. As days went by, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. I started noticing small, odd things. My stuff wasn't where I left it, and sometimes I'd hear noises outside my window late at night. I tried to tell myself it was all in my head, but the uneasy feeling lingered. One evening, I received a message from an unknown number. "Did you enjoy the chocolate?" It read. My heart sank. I hadn't told anyone about the chocolate, not even my friends. How did this person know? I blocked the number, but the messages kept coming, from different numbers each time. I started to feel trapped in my own home, jumping at shadows and doubting every sound. The reality of my situation was setting in. Someone was going out of their way to instill fear in me, and it was working. The casual fun of swiping right on Tinder had spiraled into a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. I've never been in a serious relationship before. I've gone out with a few people, but nothing serious ever came of it. And I've never been with anyone in that way. Just like many others who are 20 years old, I decided to give Tinder a try. I wanted to meet new people. I usually have a good sense of what people are like, but with this guy, I completely missed the mark. 2 days ago, I matched with a guy named Max. His first message was about wanting to meet me and my cat, saying he found us both adorable. I liked how straightforward he was, so I agreed to meet him. The first warning sign came when I didn't reply to him right away, and he sent another message, asking if he did something wrong. I thought he was just nervous, so I explained why I was late in replying and everything seemed fine. We decided to meet at a bar last night. The second warning sign was when I got to the bar. In my state, you can't enter a bar if you're under 21. I didn't know that, but Max had assured me it wouldn't be a problem. Of course, he was wrong, but since my birthday was only a week away, the doorman let me in. Max showed up soon after, wearing a red jacket and sneakers, looking like any other guy. He ordered a gin and tonic for each of us, and we started talking. He talked about his family and how they were well off, and I shared a bit about my life too. Later we played pool, and that's when I left my drink unattended. After that, things get fuzzy. I can't remember much of our conversation or what happened next, except for leaving the bar, getting into his car, and then arriving near my home. I hardly drink, so I know it wasn't the alcohol that made me feel this way. I don't get drunk off one drink, nor do I experience hangovers or blackouts. I always remember what happens to me. This is important. That night, after leaving the bar, Max suggested we go to a local store to get some food. That's when the third warning happened. I thought I saw someone I knew and told Max I'd go say hello. He looked uncomfortable and waited outside, refusing to come in. It turned out I didn't actually know the person, so I quickly went back to Max and we walked to my apartment. When we arrived, my roommate Sarah was just opening the door. We exchanged a few words, and she mentioned she was going to take a shower. Max made a strange noise when he heard this. Sarah, who had also been drinking, joked about a guy wanting to be with me. I didn't think much of it, that's just how she is. But after seeing Max's reaction and realizing how exhausted and affected by the drink I was, I told him it was time for him to leave. He left without arguing or trying anything. That should have been the end, but it wasn't. Minutes after he left, my phone was flooded with messages from him. He said things like he was more open-minded than Sarah, called me dull, suggested I wasn't into guys, and complained that there was no spark between us. He wished we could have at least cuddled. I showed Sarah the messages, and even in my confused state, I noticed how shocked she was. Then it hit me. He was suggesting he wanted to be with her because he thought she was more willing than I was. It was so disturbing. I started to panic, slowly putting the pieces together. One drink should not have made me feel the way I did. I realized then that I might have been drugged. Sarah and I went to the police to report what had happened, but I decided not to get tested. I can't fully explain why. When you're in that situation, possibly drugged, it's late, you're embarrassed and scared of being wrong, and worried about getting in trouble for underage drinking, it's not easy to go through with everything. This is where my story ends. I blocked Max, but I was left terrified because he knew where I lived. I tried to sleep off whatever was in my system. Max, please never do that to anyone again. Let's never meet. You scared me so much. I'm going to share a scary story about my first boyfriend. He was my first kiss, and also the first person who treated me very badly. We began dating when I was quite young. From the start, he was very caring and always wanted to protect me. But after 5 months, I started to feel something was wrong. One day, he took me out to have fun on roller skates. We were resting for a while when 2 of his buddies came by. Suddenly he changed. The friendly smile he had just moments ago turned into a scary glare. He acted like a hunter and demanded I kiss him deeply in front of his friends. I said no because I wasn't ready for that, especially not in front of others. He got angry when I refused. He tried to force a kiss on me. I was not very strong, but I managed to push him away and ran towards where more people were skating. I told him to keep his distance while I waited for my mom to come get me. I didn't tell my mom about what happened because I was too shocked and confused. Being young, I didn't want to get into trouble for kissing a boy, so I chose to stay away from him until I could think clearly. After a week of avoiding him at school, he tried to approach me again. This time, he found me while I was with my friends. I didn't even see him coming until he was very close. His presence made me very nervous. At first, he made some small talk, but then he realized I was still upset. His attitude changed again, and he looked at me as if I were something terrible. I was holding an old-fashioned portable CD player, and suddenly, he grabbed it from me. I shouted for him to return it and tried to grab it back, which made him angry. Then he hit me so hard that I fell down. I started to cry, and soon we both were taken to the school principal's office. His dad, who was the football coach in our small town, talked to the principal. The result was that he only had to go to detention once as a punishment. After that incident, we hardly saw each other, and luckily, went to different high schools. Then during my second year of high school, I saw him again. It was at a Taco Bell drive-thru. I didn't realize he was working as the cashier until I reached the window to pay. We looked at each other awkwardly. I pretended I didn't know him and finished paying quickly so I could leave. But he took our meeting as a sign and tried to message me on Facebook. His message was awkward, asking if I was the girl from Taco Bell and calling me cute. I blocked him immediately and told my sister about it. Back then, I laughed it off, not knowing how dangerous he really could be. Years later, my sister sent me a news article with his picture. He had attacked someone with a knife at a popular place because they tried to stop him from hurting a woman. We had dated almost 10 years ago, but reading this made me realize I had escaped a very dangerous situation. The article said he was known for being violent towards women and had stalked them. It looked like he would be punished soon because of the serious nature of his crimes and the strong evidence. I never want to see him again. This story isn't over. But what happened next would reveal the depth of the horror that comes from crossing paths with someone capable of such violence. It's a chilling reminder of the dark turns life can take. In October of 2020, I bumped into a guy named Mike at a friend's birthday party. Right away, Mike seemed to take a special liking to me, but I didn't notice until several friends pointed it out. He started sending me messages frequently, and soon we began to spend time together. Just the two of us. After a few weeks, we decided to start dating. And that's when strange things started happening. Whenever I made plans to see my friends, Mike would act upset and complain that I wasn't spending enough time with him. There was one week where I had seen him nearly every day, and we had plans to meet again on a Friday morning. However, I woke up feeling unwell and had to cancel. By the evening, I felt a bit better and decided to attend a Halloween party. Mike got really upset, accusing me of not wanting to spend time with him. Other odd incidents occurred, but eventually, I decided it was best to end things with him through a message. Mike didn't handle the breakup well at all. He kept sending me messages, begging to meet in person at the park to talk things over, but I refused. He even went as far as asking my friends for my class schedule at the community college I attended. My friends didn't share it with him, knowing how strange he was acting. One day, I had to miss a class to plan my schedule for the next term. When I got back, my friend told me Mike had shown up at that class looking for me. He hadn't gotten my schedule from my friend. Instead, he had searched the college website for the classes I mentioned and tried to confront me. I was relieved I wasn't there that day. Mike continued to try and contact me, but I eventually blocked him on everything. Mike, you truly frightened me. Let's never meet again. Until my third year in high school, I was pretty much invisible. I was the classic shy girl who loved books more than parties. But when I turned 15, everything changed because I joined the cheerleading team. Our cheerleaders weren't the most famous kids in school, but people knew us. We were always in school announcements, danced at school events, and talked to a lot of students. That year, I made many friends, including some of the popular students. I thought finally, After years of being made fun of, things were looking up for me. I even started liking one of the popular guys. The cheer team's junior captain said she'd help me get closer to him. Homecoming is a huge event where I live, and I daydreamed about going with my crush. There were whispers he was planning a big surprise to ask someone to homecoming. The junior captain kept hinting that I might be the one. One day, she asked me about my favorite candy, and I was sure it was for my crush to know what to surprise me with. Imagine my shock when, after a tiring day of drama practice, a guy I barely talked to asked me out to homecoming in the school parking lot. My friends from drama class clapped, thinking I was happy. My parents were there too, filming everything. The popular students I had recently become friends with supported him from behind. I didn't get it because this guy wasn't popular and was actually known to be weird. The junior captain was there too, laughing and urging him to hand me my favorite candy. She had planned the whole thing. I didn't want to embarrass him in front of everyone, so I pretended to be okay with it. I decided I would let him down gently later. When I told my parents how uncomfortable the situation made me feel, they didn't understand. My mom thought I was being too picky, and my dad wondered if I wasn't interested in guys at all. This wasn't helped by the fact that my best friend was the only openly lesbian girl in our school. I knew saying no to this guy would cause a big problem at home, but I convinced my dad to let me have friends around during homecoming, playing on his protective side. That night, I messaged the guy to say I saw him just as a friend, but would still go to homecoming with him. He was nice about it, but I could tell he wanted more. Things seemed okay until the next day at school, when one of the cheerleaders called him my boyfriend. I quickly corrected her, saying we were just going as friends to homecoming. The confusion grew when more friends told me similar stories about how my supposed date was bragging about us being a couple. I confronted him directly, but he brushed it off as a misunderstanding, claiming innocence. I stressed that we were just friends and I had no romantic feelings towards him. He said he got it. Then the junior cheer captain called, acting friendly, but I was still upset about the homecoming mix-up. She tried convincing me to give my date a chance, saying she had helped him plan his proposal, and insisted he was a good guy beneath his creepy exterior. I retorted that maybe she should date him then. She lost her cool and insisted I owed him a chance for all his effort. I disagreed strongly and hung up, but that was just the start. From the next Monday, he began a bizarre ritual of waiting for me in the hallways to present me with a rose, holding it in his mouth. This happened daily, making me increasingly uncomfortable. Despite my protests, he persisted. The junior cheer captain and her friends made sure he always knew where to find me, turning my attempts to avoid him into a game for them. Everyone around seemed to see his actions as romantic, ignoring my discomfort. He kept telling people we were an item, escalating his behavior by interrupting my class with his rose routine, even in front of a teacher who was friends with the junior cheer captain. My protests made me the villain in the eyes of my classmates, who labeled me cold and ungrateful. My predicament was ignored. It seemed the entire school had decided for me that I was in a romantic relationship with him. My own feelings be damned. Even my crush, influenced by the popular crowd and the junior cheer captain, started pressuring me to accept my date's advances. At cheerleading events and football games, he would go out of his way to catch my attention, even using flags to make sure I noticed him from the cheering squad. This relentless pursuit left me feeling trapped and misunderstood, turning my school life into a daily ordeal. The situation kept getting worse. The guy would wait for me after every game, ready to hug me and tell me I did well. I felt trapped, worried about losing my newfound social standing if I pushed back too hard against what the popular kids wanted. So, I vented to my close friends about how uncomfortable he made me feel. While in public, I reluctantly let him have his way, hoping the whole thing would soon be forgotten. The school was known for moving on quickly from one piece of gossip to the next. I hoped some new drama would shift the focus away from me. Eventually, the truth came out in an unexpected place: the locker room. I found out that the junior cheer captain had been feeding him lies, telling him I was interested when he came to her for advice on confessing his feelings for me. She even encouraged him to believe we shared a mutual attraction, despite me not knowing much about him. She didn't care that I wasn't interested. She told me I should be thankful because their manipulation was supposedly saving me from rumors about my sexuality. In a twisted turn, my best friend and I, frustrated and wanting to challenge the absurdity of the situation, spread a rumor we were dating, playing into the school's suspicions about my sexuality. Yet, he bragged he had turned me straight. which was absurd and offensive. Homecoming night arrived, and due to a mix-up that left me without my dress, I only attended the dance briefly. My date lingered awkwardly on the sidelines while I danced freely to my favorite songs. The junior cheer captain tried to force us to slow dance, but I managed to avoid it by requesting an upbeat song instead. After the dance, while waiting for my mom in the parking lot, he asked me out. I declined politely. He suggested a group outing, trying to include the junior cheer captain and my crush to make it appealing, but I refused again, emphasizing that I was too occupied with school, theater, cheer, and work for any romantic involvement. Finally, the school's attention shifted when a teacher eloped, and my personal drama was forgotten. My schedule kept me busy, and it seemed like things were returning to normal. At the next football game, my crush offered a gesture of friendship, or maybe something more, by asking me to sit on his shoulders during the school song. It was a moment that felt like a small victory, a sign that maybe, just maybe, I could move past the awkwardness and find some normalcy again. The gesture from my crush felt like a break from all the chaos, a small hint of something nice amidst the turmoil. But the peace was short-lived. On Monday, my date made a dramatic scene in his class, standing on a chair to warn everyone about my crush, accusing him of stealing girls. The school was abuzz with gossip, and soon, I was the target of cruel names for supposedly breaking my date's heart. Overwhelmed by the drama, I skipped lunch, fearing confrontation. My decision proved wise when I discovered through Snapchat that my date had taken a pair of scissors to his arm, carving my name into his flesh. The image of his bleeding arm was sent to me by several people, some accusing me of causing his distress. The incident happened right in the middle of the cafeteria, yet it seemed to go unnoticed by the school staff. Suddenly, I was painted as the villain, the heartless girl who had wronged a supposedly love-struck boy. The stares and whispers became unbearable, and by the 5th period, I was contemplating leaving school early. That's when I received a frantic text from a cheer teammate. Initially, she had been one of those pushing for me to accept my date's affections, but the horrifying incident at lunch changed her perspective. She warned me that my date, spiraling out of control in her class, was making dark threats. He spoke of ending his life, harming my crush, and even coming after me, claiming he knew where I lived thanks to my address being shared for the homecoming invitation. With the school's new policy restricting movement, my usual escape routes were cut off. I felt trapped, with nowhere to hide from the impending confrontation. In desperation, I reached out to the junior cheer captain, the one who had set this nightmare in motion, begging her to intervene and make it clear to him that I had never been interested. She promised to speak to the counselor, but admitted the situation was far beyond her control. For the first time, I skipped class, hiding in the theater hall, trying to avoid the dangerous encounter looming at the end of the day. Messages flooded in, warning me that my date was lurking near the bathrooms, waiting for me in a secluded alcove. The thought of him ambushing me was terrifying. Just as the last period was about to start, classmates burst in, laughing maniacally as they announced my date was on his way, intent on confronting my crush, threatening to end his life. The escalation of events left me paralyzed with fear. The situation had spiraled into a nightmare, with my safety and that of my crush at serious risk. The school's corridors, once a place of learning and friendship, had transformed into a stage for a horrifying drama, with me unwillingly cast in the lead role. They found it amusing, but the fear in my crush's eyes told me this was no laughing matter. Our teachers dismissed the chaos as just another day in the drama department, but the dread within me grew as the end of the day neared, knowing he would be waiting. We used a workday as a chance to hide. My crush took refuge in the black box theater and I hid in the lighting closet. I didn't see what happened next, but my best friend later recounted the events. Minutes before class ended, he appeared outside our door declaring his readiness to confront my crush, hinting he had brought a weapon. Whether he actually had one, we didn't know, but the thought was terrifying. He was bleeding through paper towels wrapped around his arm. My friend tried to convince him we had already left, but he waited outside for what felt like an eternity, only leaving when school officials started checking the halls. That evening, I messaged him, firmly ending any possibility of us even being friends and urging him to seek help. Despite his apologies and pleas, I stood firm. No meant no. Yet he didn't understand. He repeated his disturbing behavior on Valentine's Day, the next homecoming, and every significant school event until I graduated. I've moved far away for college, and my family has since moved from the house he knew. Despite the rumors, my romantic preferences remained unchanged, and my crush eventually came out, strengthening our friendship. The aftermath of those events left me wary of romance, a reminder of my first unwanted suitor. The last encounter with him was at a homecoming game after my graduation, supported by true friends who protected me from his antics. Reflecting on those times, it's painful to realize I was blamed for everything. My high school peers still mention it as if I wronged him, tarnishing my view of red roses forever.